One issue that many of Americans are facing today are the rising cost of prescriptions in the United States over the past few years. There are three primary stakeholders in this issue. First, the American public, which places large value on personal health and personal well-being. Secondly, pharmaceutical companies that place large value on capitalistic principles around price that allow them to set and control their own prices as they wish. And thirdly, the United States government that really values the same capitalistic principles around price, but also values both current and future public health. A portion of Americans in the lower and middle income classes simply cannot keep up with prescription price increases. And price increases are placing large financial stressors on American families and need to be slowed while maintaining the same levels of research and innovation that pharmaceutical companies are producing today. In the first 6 months of 2019, an average of 3,400 drugs saw price increases cumulatively averaging 10.5%. While some of these drugs increased in price much lower percentages, around 1 or 2%, some of these drugs saw price increases of over 300 and 400% in just the first 6 months of 2019 alone. Combined with that, Americans already spent the most in the world on drugs, over $1,200 per person per year, accounting for over $330 billion in GDP spending every single year. To tell a brief story, Josh Wilkerson was a 27-year-old man that grew up in rural Virginia. Josh, like many Americans, stayed on his parents' health insurance plan until he was 26, when he was kicked off and had to open his own insurance policy. This insurance policy was much, much more expensive, and in an attempt to save money, Josh switched insulins. He was type 1 diabetic. He switched insulins in an attempt to save money. He also began rationing his insulin, which is one of the biggest things that you don't want to do as a diabetic. Josh eventually went into a coma and died due to his insulin switch combined with the rationing that he was performing. This is a very, very sad story of a 27-year-old dying because he simply could not pay for his prescription costs. And Josh is not alone. It's estimated that one out of every 4 diabetic patients ration, and this statistic can be applied for any other chronic condition that requires constant medication. The simple solution here seems to be, let's just cap prescription prices. Let's stop the pharmaceutical companies from making all these huge profits off of these medications. The problem is, pharmaceutical companies are not making huge profits. They're investing most of the money that they would be making back into research and development for future drugs. And this is proven by transparency reports that many corporations have began producing in recent years, which essentially shows that pharmaceutical companies are investing millions and millions of dollars back into their own companies for research and development for new and future drugs they're trying to have approved. From a government's perspective, the United States is essentially a medical leader of the world and doesn't want to miss out on the next drug that potentially could cure cancer or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. The United States government simply can't place a price tag on a cure for one of those chronic conditions and what that would mean for both current and future public health for generations to come. The two main warrants here are that there is a huge stress being placed on lower income families due to prescription costs, and that this is a huge negative because they are unfortunately having to make the choice between food or rent payments and their prescription costs. And secondly, preserving capitalism principles while still allowing for research and development. These capitalistic principles are huge. You can look at any communist nation in the history of the world, essentially, and see that as soon as price ceilings have been implemented, that there have been drastic shortages, and the country has essentially gone into ruin because of this. The United States really wants to prevent this from happening, wants to prevent having to put price ceilings in place so they can preserve the capitalism principles that the United States was founded on. So the solution that I propose to you today is essentially to cap the total percentage that a prescription can increase in price in a given calendar year. Combined with that, I would like to put no introductory price ceilings in place. I want pharmaceutical companies to be able to charge initially whatever they would like. But, while this still preserves capitalism principles for those corporations, allowing them to set the price initially as they wish and being able to control if the price increases or decreases up to a certain percentage, it really combines with the utilitarian mindset of protecting the lower income. There's no reason for those people to be suffering while they could still be receiving the same treatment that somebody in the upper class could be. This expansion of trying to help as many people as possible, trying to benefit as many people as possible, is really that utilitarian mindset. And pharmaceutical companies really don't have a reason to increase prices just because the drug got popular. All of the cost goes into the research and development, which is incurred before the drug hits the market. So there's no real reason to increase the price once it's been set. This allows for prescription pharmaceutical companies to maintain their level of entitlement through the entitlement theory. They can set the price as they wish, and they can increase it as they wish, up to a certain percentage. This really reduces the burden on Americans, but also allows pharmaceutical companies to continue doing what they're doing. And it really puts the government in a neutral position, as they're not choosing one side or the other. They're not choosing to favor the entitlement theory over utilitarianism or things like that. This also allows for pharmaceutical companies to continue research and development for that next miracle drug, which essentially comes back to the idea of utilitarianism. Not only helping this generation, not only helping Americans today, but helping as many Americans in the future as possible. It's vastly important that we slow the increase on prescription pharmaceuticals. Thank you.